So, what I'm going to talk about today is probably going to be a long one because I feel like there's a lot to cover, and I don't want to make separate videos with this one because I don't want to cut off my train of thought. So, there was something that I wanted to talk about last night, and I had to check my motives and reasons for talking about it. So, I didn't make the video last night right away. Thought about it, think I have a good way to convey this. And then while I was thinking about this certain thing, I had another experience that I would also like to talk about. So maybe I might make two videos because those ones don't really go together. Um, so the first one is when I thought about talking about this one, it did make my heart race because I feel like every time I'm about to challenge somebody's boundaries or challenge somebody's power, beliefs, that's when people are most likely to react. So that is what I'm going to do. There's some other beliefs and boundaries that I'd like to challenge today. Uh, and then, so I guess I'll just start. What I was thinking about was gender roles and which kind of just led into homosexuality. So I just want to touch base on that. I'm going to tell you my theories. I could tell you my experience with this, but you'll understand why I'm hesitant to do that one on this one by the time we're done, hopefully. So, okay. When I think about gender roles, I understand the evolution of who was thought needed to do what, or who believed what needed to happen. So, when we had what I'm going to refer to as the first, whatever that looked like, cavemen, whatever that looked like. When I think about that, it made sense to me that you had to utilize your best assets, and at that time, knowledge would have been minimal from just the way I understand it. So what they would have seen right in front of them was that, yes, men were stronger and that women gave birth, so it's theirs. That's what, if I was them, if I put myself in that shoes, that's what I would have seen. Okay? So obviously the men, the strong ones, had to go hunt these big animals so that their villages could survive, their communities could survive. They utilized their best assets, which was their strength. Because of that, and since the women were having the kids, of course they were asked to stay home and care for the kids and do that. It wasn't necessary or really needed for anybody to go outside of what was just instantly their best assets. Is that saying that the men were not capable of staying home and taking care of the children? No. Is that saying that the women were not able to go out and hunt? No. It was just you had to do what was the very best at that time. So when the men were going out and hunting and seeing the world, they gained that knowledge. With hunting, there's communication involved, so they learned how to communicate, which with that came the ability to read, write, all that, understanding body language better. That was just what they learned because that was their experience. The women learned how to care for the home. That was their experience. They were stuck in that. Okay, was that bad? No, they needed to survive. But due to the gain of knowledge and more experience, we were able to make the world safer. So being able to break out of those gender roles doesn't seem like it could have negative consequences, except for from our own perceptions. So the reason I'm talking about this is because this is where challenging beliefs are going to come into play. I'm going to talk about a couple of books that I read, and if you've read these books, even if you haven't, you probably know which ones I'm talking about. I am not judging that you believe this. I'm just asking, look a little deeper and question why you believe this. So, the gender roles, how it plays out in my mind is when people learn to communicate and read and write, since that was men's experiences at the time, that's what they learned, only they could do it. Every great work that I read, every great person from the past was a man. I mean, there was great women, don't get me wrong, but those ones were the recorded ones, the written ones, the ones that got passed down, because that was what they were able to do. I would have loved to have read women's ideas from back then. I can't imagine the great philosophers that were out there that just weren't able to read and write, you know? So that got passed down. So when I say that people are fallible and having anybody on the top of any structure is fallible, I mean that in every regard. The family structure, the religious structures, the government structures, every regard. If there's somebody on top of that structure, it will be fallible. That's just my belief, because that's what I've witnessed. And when I see anybody trying to take power and assertion, it just kind of crumbles. So what my theory is that since the men learned to read and write, the New Testament was written after Jesus, okay? There is only one verse in there that I'm going to bring up later, but the Old Testament was written before this person came and said, hey, just accept each other, just love each other, just be one, just be equal. Hung out with the people that the religions deemed unacceptable, unworthy. He hung out with those ones because he wanted to show them that, you can be loved no matter who you are. So, but the people who wrote these books, guys, were people. Okay? They may have had a greater understanding than those around them, or maybe not even a greater understanding, just a greater ability to communicate what they were feeling and seeing. So they wrote their experiences, but we have to remember that that was still their experiences. So when these men were writing that, of course, the family structure is the man is in charge, the woman will be submissive, and then the kids will be submissive. But they still had to show they were humble, so of course they're going to be submissive to God. Because if you say I'm submissive to God, people are going to listen to you because you have a divine wisdom. Somebody else is telling you this thing. But you guys, honestly, if any of it is like 100% true, the only time that I can think of that, they said that God said this was the 10 Commandments. I haven't read those in forever. I don't remember what they are. I just know that it was usually just saying, don't harm another person. Every one of those actions was just don't harm another person. Okay? That was the only time I can think of. Other than that, you have to think about the people who are writing these. What were their motives? What were their feelings? What were their experiences? So if the men were the ones learning to read and write, when they wrote these books, their experiences was my father before me did this, his father before him did this, and his father before him did this. They told me that that's the way it is because that's the way it's always been because cavemen did that. So it's just been like that since the beginning of time. Does that mean that it shouldn't change? No, I don't think so. I just think that's how it went down. So when they were trying to, because everybody wants to understand the perfect structure. Even I was writing different charts and like graphs and like families. I was seeing that like who's in charge and how is this working? Where are the fights? Like I was doing this. And so even if I had not been, if I wanted to take power over everybody and thought that if there was a certain person in charge, I could make the world better. So if I believe that me being that certain person in charge could make the world better, and I'm writing these things, I'm gonna say, I believe that women should be in charge. That's what I'd say. If I was the one who was learning to read and write, that's what would have been said if that's what I felt at that time. Do I believe that? No, I honestly believe you guys, we're all just equal. We got to be on an equal playing field. That's what I sincerely believe. So yes, question my motives too. Look into who's telling you these things. But again, I don't want to take power over anybody. So, and you're more than welcome to look into my past. I put most of it online because I have nothing to hide. But so if you want me to check my bias, I've checked my bias, which is why it took me a long time to make this video, because I had to make sure that, you know, really, do I believe this, or am I being selfish, trying to change things for my gain, which I don't think I am. So yeah, the men wrote those books, guys. People wrote those. People are fallible. Everybody's fallible. They wrote that. Is that saying it was wrong? Yeah, I kind of think it's wrong. I don't think anybody should take power over anybody, no matter what your gender is. So, the best relationships I've seen are people who just are equal. They communicate well. They make decisions together. Those are the best ones I've seen. There was nobody making the final decision. It was, if we don't agree on this, we're not going to do it. Because we are a family. We are a unit. We are equals. That was it. And then, which brings me to the homosexuality is an abomination part in the Bible. Because that was in the New Testament, which seemed to be way less judging, but then that still got put in there. So here's my theory. What I would like, which I know pretty much anybody on the planet would be like, yeah, that would be awesome, is to have the actual written text of the person who wrote this. Like, so that way you can analyze the handwriting. How were they feeling when they wrote that? Were they mad? Okay? So my theory is that the guy who wrote homosexuality is an abomination, in that moment, he was probably feeling some type of way when he wrote that. Did he have feelings for a woman who had feelings for another woman? I want to know. It would be cool to know. That's just my theory, because it doesn't make sense. When I think the word sin, any action that causes another person harm. I can see how any relationship, no matter your gender, can cause harm due to selfish actions, asserting your perceived power over somebody. I can see how relationships can cause that type of harm, which is why I feel that there might be a way to do it better. But that is also just my opinion. If adults are consenting and willing to put themselves in that situation, I don't think any of us have the right to tell them you can't, because that is us pushing our will on them. But in order to cause the least amount of pain, I do think there is a way to do that. But again, that's up to the people in the relationships. So yeah, I think that guy was feeling some type of way when he wrote that. And which brings me to one final thing. When people say that this is the Word of God, any of these religious books, this is the Word of God. It's like, okay, maybe, but at the same time, a man wrote that. A human wrote that. A person wrote that. Okay? So, it's going to be fallible. Nothing's perfect. People can be perfect, but it takes work, guys. So, just question more. Always question more. I understand that questioning can seem scary, because if you sincerely believe that there's this divine power telling you these are the rules and you question that, then you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to hell no matter what, because I questioned the ultimate authority. And I don't think that he'd have a problem. He, she, whatever it is, love, guys. I don't think it would have a problem with you being like, why don't you want me to do this? When people in my life ask me, hey, why don't you want me to do this? I just explain, because it hurts, guys. I'm not mad that you questioned that I asked you that, hey, please don't kill people. I'm not mad that you questioned that. Question it. Why don't I want you to kill people? Why don't I want you to hurt people? So, I don't think there's anything wrong with questioning anything. I don't know if this made sense. I hope it did. So I'm gonna go into the next one because something had happened right after that. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. He is fine, guys. He's just trying to assert his power. He just wants my attention. Okay? There's not abuse going on, except for himself. He's doing this to himself, just so you know that. Because I'm not going to delete this video just because he wants to act some type of way. So what you hear in the background is what you're going to hear in the background. It's a controlled chaos. Working on it. So I'm going to end this one, and then I will do my second one after I make this subside. So, to be continued.